Today's conversation is going to be about how you can use your background skills and your background knowledge as a graduate student to help you adapt to what you're going through in your environment of graduate school or professional school. You can go either way, any form of higher education. So in order for us to get into this conversation, we need to know a little bit more about Jamesa's background. So can you give us as much or as little information about some of the skills that you learned and what experiences allowed you to learn them preceding graduate school?
Yeah, so I did not have like a necessarily, for the longest time, I did not have like a traditional route to graduate school. Coming into undergrad, actually my freshman year, I was a studio art major because that's what I did growing up, painting and drawing. Long story short, my freshman year, I was at University of Kentucky. Ended up not really liking it there, and I come from a family with not a lot of money, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and so between Atlanta to Kentucky, I didn't have a car. Transportation between the two was very hard. It was expensive. Getting things to me from home was very difficult. And so after my freshman year, I had to take like time. I took a semester to think about where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. Ended up transferring to Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama. And I was pre-architecture for a semester, and I was already thinking about doing a physics minor because I also really loved science and math growing up. It just wasn't like my main thing that I was thinking about. And then eventually I became a physics major, which is what I got my bachelor's degree in. But while I was at Auburn, it wasn't until junior year that I was finally getting the advice. It's like, oh, you need research experience for, you know, if you want future employment, and even if you're even thinking about graduate school, like you need these experiences. I didn't know what I was supposed to look for in an experience. All I know is that I was already thinking, oh, NASA would be a cool place to work. All these aerospace companies do really cool things. And so I got internships through NASA during undergrad. One was in Maryland at Goddard Space Flight Center. The other one was at JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab out in California. And then my final one, to bring everything full circle, was actually here in Cleveland, Ohio, right after I graduated from undergrad at NASA Glenn. And so all of these, and all these three internship experiences, I was doing three completely separate things. The very first one, I was doing environmental testing for hardware that would go on a balloon flight. So it was a lot of wiring, electrical circuits. That's where I really started to learn how to code on a variety of platforms like LabVIEW, a little bit of Python. My second internship experience at JPL was completely data analysis and coding for looking at data from satellites from Mars and also Earth-based ground observations. And then my final internship experience here at Glenn was working on aerogels, which are very lightweight materials for thermal insulation, thermal barriers, and thermal protection systems like heat shields. So through those three experiences, I gained a lot of knowledge about the things that I could do as a scientist with my physics background, and the things that people were willing to teach me and that I was willing to learn. And all of this prepared me really well for when I went abroad for a year to do a Fulbright scholarship in Germany. So this was before I started grad school, right after I graduated from undergrad. I left Auburn, went home for 2 weeks, came here for the summer, went home for another week, and then went to Germany. And then I was in Germany for a full year, didn't come home until that next summer. And then like 4 weeks later, I was starting my PhD at Penn State. And so my Fulbright scholarship was looking at materials for heat shields and thermal protection systems for atmospheric reentry vehicles like the space shuttle. And that was an experience where I was completely doing material science and material science engineering research. And that was one of my main drivers for applying for a PhD in material science. after I graduated from undergrad, I knew that I needed to go to grad school. Like I knew I needed more training, but I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to study or where I wanted to study. So taking that extra time to do this amazing opportunity in another country and taking that time to really figure out what I wanted to do really helped me in the long run.
Wow, it seems like stuff just took off for you.
It really did. Like once my junior year hit and I just started gaining all of these opportunities, and in my mind I was like, okay, I can't stop now. All of this finally is lining up with what I should be doing with my life. So I just need to keep this going and see where it takes me.
Definitely. I mean, it got you, like you said, full circle right back there to NASA. I didn't realize that you had had such a long-standing relationship with NASA. Like,
Yeah, it's, I'm pretty sure. So other than my experience in Germany, the agency is the only, like, not business, but it's the only entity I've ever worked for. Like the others, like, of course, each NASA center is different, but like, I can't think of another time working for anyone else other than my time in Germany working for the German Aerospace Center. Yeah.
and that
like,
was still an aerospace center.
And it was still like, and it was still a federal, it's so German Aerospace Center, DLR, that's their like space program. So it's just another like working for one government to another and then back to this one. Oh yeah, and of course, I guess if you count our Penn State experience as employment, but that I count that as school.
So you got all these great skills throughout these different internships. You said you learned how to code in R. I think that was the main one that stuck out to me because I'm learning how to code in R now, even though like I never thought that I would need to learn how to code as like a person who studies molecular biology. But you learned other skills, other important technical skills in data analysis and things like that. So how did you then transfer that background knowledge into you being a graduate student?
So I think all of this background knowledge that I learned, in summary, I don't want to say it made certain things easier, but it made certain things, like being able to accomplish certain things, a little bit easier. When I first got into grad school, I was actually kind of sad because I wouldn't be able to do, at least for material science, what I was researching, I wouldn't be able to do as much math or as much coding as I wanted, but I know it's a completely nerdy thing to say, but I miss doing math.
Kudos to you.
And, but I ended up using that knowledge through some of my classes where we would have to derive equations for engine efficiencies. I use a lot of my coding for that. A lot of coding I use to perform some data analyses for my research group. So at least that's where my coding experience, I was still able to utilize that. Using my lab experience gained from my different internships, of course, was very important. I was in a lab almost every day for my PhD, so being comfortable around different pieces of equipment was very important. Overall, I'd say the soft skills I learned from all of those experiences in terms of working in a group and communicating with different people, communicating my science to different people, what I was trying to accomplish, I feel like that was very important. Like not only my experience abroad, but definitely also my experience here in the US, because like I said, I was in 3 different places across the country. You can meet a variety of people across the country, no matter where you are. So I feel like all those things made me gave me a variety of experiences that made me, I guess, very adaptable to, I guess, anything that could be thrown my way.
I really do appreciate that you yourself, just as a student coming in, looked for opportunities to input skills that you already had. When I came into grad school, I think that I didn't have any technical skills coming in. I mean, I knew how to work in a lab, so I did know how to use a pipette, and I knew how to follow directions, like protocols.
Mm-hmm.
But I think majority of my skills and like my development was in that soft area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really good at being a leader in groups. I was really good at, managing projects, or coordinating events and things like that. And because those skills aren't really like emphasized, or I'm not gonna say, they just aren't really talked about when you're in the sciences in grad school.
Yeah.
That for me, I didn't feel like I came into graduate school with any background skills. And so I spent a lot of my first 2 years trying to develop those skills, only to come back around and realize that those soft skills that I had, so the ability to talk to people, the ability to explain things, the ability to manage, and the ability to organize, was also really important skills that I was bringing into the degree.
Yeah.
I just did not think that they were, so I wasn't utilizing them to the best that I could. So for the fact that, you were proactive about, okay, where can I use my background knowledge? Like, I really like that.